In this video, I want to take you from 0 to something greater than 0 in Godot. So first, go to godotengine.org and select which operating system you need. I would download it for Windows. This will give you a zipped file in your downloads folder. You just need to unzip it, and then you will have 2 executables. I actually just drag and drop those executables into the same folder where I have all my Godot projects, and I mainly use the Windows 64-bit executable. It has a relatively small memory footprint. We love that about Godot. That also makes it quick to open. I've got a lot of my works in progress right here, but I'm going to go ahead and click on Create and create a new project. Now, for some reason, it always puts it in not the folder I want, so I'm going to browse to my Godot folder right here, select current folder, and I'm going to rename this project Basic Demo. And I'm going to click Create. I am leaving in the actual runtime it takes to load up Godot to give you a sense of how quick it actually is. I'm going to create a basic 2D scene for us today, so I'm going to click on 2D scene in the upper left. This creates a scene tree with node 2D as the root. Node 2D is a very basic node that has things like a position, a rotation, a scale, skew, and actually quite a few other things that we're not going to worry too much about today. The first thing I'm going to do is add a floor to my scene. I'm going to right click on the node 2D and go to add child node. Now ever after this, I'm going to use the shortcut Control A. I use this all the time. It's good to learn. All right, add child node. And I'm going to search for a static body 2D and hit enter because there it is selected right there. And now the node 2D has a child node named static body 2D. We have a little yellow warning because the static body 2D wants a collision shape. So Control A, start to type in collision shape 2D right there, hit enter. And the collision shape has the yellow triangle because it wants a shape. So we click on shape over here, and I'm going to select the new rectangle shape 2D. And I'm going to give it a size. There we go. There's my floor. But this is just an area. It's visible to us in the editor, but it's going to be invisible to the player when we actually run the scene. So I go click on static body 2D, Control A, and I need to add a mesh instance 2D. Now the mesh instance is going to allow me to go over here to mesh and add in a box mesh, which will just give me a color here. Basically, I'm going to drag and open this up, and there's going to be this white colored rectangle for my floor. I just manually lined that up with the collision shape. I'm actually going to drag my collision shape below my mesh instance 2D. Nope, not as a child. Oops, I did it wrong. There we go. But just beneath it, whatever's lower in the listing on the left here is going to be on top of anything that's higher up. So static body 2D has these 2 node children, mesh instance and collision shape, but the collision shape is now being shown above the mesh instance 2D, and that just helps me make sure it's lined up right there. And that looks good enough. I'm going to click on static body 2D and use the shortcut F2 to rename my static body to be floor, because it's my floor. All right, now we're going to add in the player. Click on node 2D, Control A, character body 2D. This is going to let our player move around. The character body is represented by this little running stick figure icon. It has the yellow marker because it also needs a collision shape. So we add a collision shape 2D, and to that we are going to make, again, just a rectangle shape 2D. I'm going to push the middle mouse button down the roller on my mouse and drag to recenter where I'm looking in the editor. And now I'm going to click on character body 2D, Control A, and I'm going to add a sprite 2D. Sprite 2D is going to let us have a visual for our character. We could have just used a mesh instance 2D like we did with the floor, but I want an actual image that's not just a colored rectangle. So that means we need to import some stuff into our project. We can just right click down here and create a new folder, name it assets, hit enter. Now we have this folder here, but I'm going to need to go into the project folder anyway, so I'm going to minimize this. Back in my Godot subfolder here, I'm going to scroll up. We should have basic demo. There it is. Open that up. Open up assets. And I've already got another folder where I just threw in more than enough assets for this quick demo. And we'll just copy those over. Great. And we'll go back to our project. All right, so now assets is populated. I'm just going to grab the tank here and drag it into the Sprite 2D's texture over here. Now that won't show up unless the Sprite 2D is already selected in the editor. And we see we have a little tank right here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm just rolling the mouse wheel. And there it is. It's not really positioned where I want. I'm going to go up to character body 2D, click on that, and try and drag and drop it where I want it. However, that is bad. Notice when I dragged and dropped it, it changed what was selected from the character body 2D to the sprite 2D. I've actually only moved the sprite, and the collision shape was left behind. There it is right there. Not what I want. Control Z to undo, click on character body 2D, go over to transform here, and change the position manually by clicking on the X option, changing it to, I don't know, 50, changing the Y to -50. Yes, that's something to get used to. Upward on the Y direction is negative, not positive. So put that in your brain so you don't make that mistake. And now our tank is better positioned. That looks good. Let's actually run our scene. Now we can't run it without saving it, so I'll use Control S to save the scene. I will name the scene Demo, and I will save it into a folder named Scenes. We want to keep our project organized. Save. I'm going to run it by clicking on this little, what's this called? You know, directors in movies use it and it like snaps and they say cut or take 1 or take 2 or whatever. Anyway, this icon right here for run current scene, the shortcut is F6. My floor is at the top of my window. That's not really what I wanted. So let's close out of that. And how can we fix this? Now we could fix it by clicking and dragging everything down and to the right, but I'm going to go ahead and add in a camera 2D. So I click on my node 2D root, I do Control A, camera 2D, and now I have a camera 2D child of the node 2D, and there's this like pinkish purple block showing what would be on screen if we clicked to run the current scene again or use the shortcut F6. All right, so it's not really centered the way I want, but there's our tank and our floor, so that's pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm not, can I click and drag the camera? I can click and drag the camera. I find that to be fraught, so I often just go to the transform and edit the X and Y there, but that did work. This isn't positioned very precisely, but we're going to go with it anyway. Good enough. Press F6 to run the current scene. Cool, that's basically what I was going for. But there's no interaction, nothing moves. So to interact with the world here, I'm going to click on character body 2D for my player. I'm actually going to use F2 and rename it to be player. That doesn't change anything other than the name in the editor. And then I'm going to click on this little scroll with a plus sign to add a script to the player. It's automatically named player.gd. I don't want it saved in the scenes folder though. So I click on the folder icon, go up, right click, new folder, scripts. I'm going to save my scripts in here, and then I'll click open, which will also save it into this folder. Sorry, no it won't. Create will automatically save it into the folder. Now this is empty. I'm going to copy a template script off the internet. Here's the web page that I'm using, and here's the script right here, but there'll be more details on that, plus all links will be in the video description. So we're going to copy and paste that example script, that template script in there, and let's actually just see what it does. F6 is that shortcut to run current scene. I'm using the left and right arrow keys to move left and right. I'm using the enter key to jump. And cool, we have motion. That's a big start. I can fall off the world. Uh-oh, goodbye. I'm stopping that either with exit, the X arrow, or by clicking the square stop as opposed to like play, pause, right there, stop. That looked good, but I actually didn't like how the tank was kind of like sinking into the floor a little bit. The reason for that is that if we go to our player over here, and we go to the 2D view, so you'll see along the top here, there's different views, 2D, 3D script. I'm going to go back to 2D, and we'll see the world. I'm going to zoom in with my mouse wheel, and I'm going to drag the sprite 2D up so that the collision shape is beneath it. Sorry, it took me back to the script. Go back to 2D here. And you'll see that the collision shape doesn't really line up with the image. So I'm going to drag the corners of this to better line up with the tank image. I think that looks pretty good. Obviously, little parts of it are hanging out the sides. I'm okay with that. And then I will press F6 to run it again. Now it sits more directly on the floor, and it looks pretty good. Press stop to get out of that. Now let's look at that script in a little bit more detail. The script extends character body 2D, because remember that is what our player is. So this is an extension of that. We have two constant variables, the speed And the jump velocity, if you wanted the speed to change, this would be a var rather than a const. Colon equals tells Godot to infer the type of this variable and set its value based on whatever type is shown over here. We do the same thing with jump velocity. We make it negative though, because remember up is negative in Godot. Here is a variable, so a variable named gravity, and its type, colon, is going to be integer. We're just going to state that and then set it equal to a value. Now this value we're going to grab from the project settings, and it's going to be the default gravity value, which is baked into every project. You can change this sort of thing by going over to project settings, but that's more advanced than we want for this video. You could also just set in your own number if you wanted, but this is the way they did it in the template that I grabbed, and I like this way of doing it. Next up is a function. Func. Physics process. So this is going to be called every frame of your game, and it's going to be passed a numeric value named delta, a floating point value, and the delta is going to be how many seconds have elapsed, or really a fraction of a second, that has elapsed since the previous frame, since the previous time this function was called. And this will let us control how things move in the world independent of frame rate. So if your computer is faster or slower than mine, the effects in the world should still look the same. We're going to add on gravity. So if our character body is not on the floor, we are going to add to the y component of the velocity gravity times delta, how much time has elapsed. We are accelerating downward. Now, if input action just pressed UI accept, which by default is the enter key on the keyboard, and we are on the floor, then we should jump. We should change the y component of our velocity to the jump velocity. You can change which buttons do this sort of thing, again in project settings, but that's beyond the scope of this video. All right, next, for the moving left and right, we are going to create a new variable named direction. We're going to infer its type and set its value equal to the result of input.getAccess UI left, UI right. By default, these are the left and right arrow keys on my keyboard, and getAccess basically bundles up the two results from these two different buttons into one value. Essentially, if you're pressing the left arrow key, it's going to be -1, and if you're pressing the right arrow key, it's going to be +1. If this variable was set, because it's possible I wasn't pressing either key. So if one of the keys was being pressed, then set the x component of velocity to that direction times speed. I would much prefer that this was times delta and we adjusted our speed accordingly, but the script I copied down didn't do that, so for now we're just going to go with it. Otherwise, move that x component of velocity towards 0. Now, I think this is a little overcomplicated for a little tutorial video, so I'm actually just going to change it to be equal to 0. And lastly, move and slide. This is a built-in function that will move our character body, and if it collides with something that it might slide against, like if we made our floor tilted at an angle, gravity might pull it down and slide it along that, depending on the friction and other properties that we can set elsewhere. But for now, it's just a simple way of moving our character. You can just change the position of your character body directly. We could say it plus equals velocity, for example. There might be some small adjustments we need to make to that, but that would be the basic idea. You can always control this stuff. My little changes didn't break anything. I hope you have enjoyed and learned something from this rapid-fire introduction to Godot. If you stick with it, you can someday create a janky little tank racer like this one that I created. I created this tank game based off of this tutorial right here. Now, this is a little bit of an older tutorial, so I did have to make some adjustments to it. But that's what we do. We follow some tutorials, we learn what we can, we experiment and learn new things. Consider checking out some of my other Godot videos. Many of them are a little bit advanced, but I wanted to create a simpler one right here for beginners. So hopefully you enjoyed, and good luck and have fun on your programming and game development journey.